Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
Harry, good morning. Harry's our station manager at WNHH, and I really love to hear his voice. Doesn't his voice sound good, guys?
Yes,
it does.
Yeah. That song was kind of intro. We have teachers on the teachers and activists and just committed people we're going to talk to today. And I just wanted to mention to everybody that kind of lead song. I taught 2 semesters at Gateway Community College, and it was a public speaking course. And so this was the gentleman's final product. He's a rapper and songstress kind of thing. So this was his final product. And I've been playing his song for the last 2 years. And I mean, I owe him royalties like crazy, but I just love it. And basically I can understand what he's saying. So that's what attracted me. But never give up seems to be the theme. And Jesse Turner's with us, and Janice Clark, and Jason Gilmore, and Rose Reyes, and Shelly Jones. And Michelle, what's your last name again? McKnight.
McKnight.
Miss Michelle McKnight. Michelle, should I talk about your email name? I should mention it. We'll mention that a little later, but I really love it. And the fact that you publicly, and Joanne, good to see you as well. So Jesse, kick us off a little bit. I mean, I'm joking a little bit as we intro, but this really is a serious topic as we move forward this summer and this fall in terms of safety in schools. And I'm convinced, Jesse, even if everything was resolved tomorrow, I mean, if there was a perfect world tomorrow, we would still have some issues to kind of deal with in terms of education, not only in the state and in the nation, but also globally. But Jesse, kind of kick us off a little bit in terms of what safety in schools might mean in this near-term issue in terms of public health and really educational equity, and just how can we be fair and equitable and make this world a better place?
Well, you know, my main concern, Tom, has been this inequity that has been with us for 170 years. And if we haven't done right by Black and brown and immigrant children and poor children in all that time, are we going to do right coming back? So the CDC has guidelines for returning to schools, for being safe. We know that the French returned, and it just returned 20% of their schools. And within 2 weeks, 70 children died. You know, got the virus within that time. So Europe is acting differently. So England, Scotland, Wales said they will not return an island. They will not return until they feel safe. So the question is, and you know, we know we're waiting on the governor and the session to come back, then the legislature. Are they going to give us the tools? Are they going to give us the supports and the funding that will make it safe for our children to come back? And we've seen it when we look at France. France had the guidelines. They had the space in their classrooms. They arranged it. They had the partitions. They did all the things. They're busing. They did it all. So what are we going to do? That's my main, and I have these guests here because these guests, they were going to walk for equity before this all began. We were going to go to the Capitol on April 3rd. We're on the Paul Babz show talking about that walk for equity. We were already fighting for that. So, I'm just glad that we have real teachers, real educators in the room, not policymakers, not legislators, not people, CEOs from companies, but real people. I trust the teachers.
Excellent. And so your group is here. Your gang of 7 or 8 are here. I like that.
These are my heroes.
All right. Who would like to jump in terms of elaborate and share?
I raised my hand.
You're recognized, Rose Reyes.
So let's start with the fact that our governor is disappointing me with this he did a pre-announcement where his goal is to have all pre-K-12 schools open 5 days a week. And this was in alignment with a comment that he made about he was not in alignment with the $600 extension from the federal government because it discourages work. And I'm really worried about these messages that he's sending out. And so what I see is this push to get us open, but not for education, but for, servicing the industry that I guess is pushing him. And I don't want to go back to a dystopian brick and mortar, with sneeze guards, plexiglass. And I don't want our state money to be used in purchasing materials that have nothing to do with education, but everything to do with monitoring. And again, it's our children who are being used in purchasing, nothing to do with it. I don't want to say sacrifice, but rearranged for the sake of something else. There's something else that's pushing this agenda, and it's certainly not their education. It's about a place to put them so that these essential workers can be made available for the industries that tell the governor that if these industries don't open soon enough, there'll be great collapse and so on and so forth. I am an educator. I'm not a monitor. If they want childcare, they can rent my building, and then I continue my remote learning. It may not be the ideal situation, but I can certainly execute a plan of education that way. Watching this money being spent on plexiglass, on thermometers and gloves and individual aspects that every kid can't even be with each other. We're talking about 7-year-olds. In my case, 7-year-olds. The whole purpose of going to school is a social emotional aspect. And if I can't assure them the environment that they can use, then they don't need to be there yet. They just don't. They don't need to be there yet. Okay.
Great. Rose, thank you so much. And just to let our audience know that you're calling in from the Wyndham area, and you're also on the town council. So you're a passionate person. You're a civic servant, and also you're involved with the political mix, and that's the key for our civic engagement. We have to kind of be involved at so many levels. Shelley, I see you tentatively raising your hand, but
yes. So
Rose, can we allow Shelley to say a few words now? Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I pass.
Thank you so much, Rose. Yeah, you gave me so many thoughts. There's so much to talk about, but one of the things I want to mention is that my area is math education, and math plays such a big role in schools. And I've heard so much from parents about the math that their students are doing at home and not being able to help them. And so one of the things that there are many organizations, math organizations, that have put out statements, especially after some of the killings that have happened, about equity. And they put out their math organizations, but they put out these statements because math has never been equitable. And so now it's the students are even falling further behind. But with that said, and let me just mention some of the organizations: the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, NCSM, Math Leadership, the Benjamin Banneker Association. I mean, I have a whole list of organizations that put out statements. But with those statements, all of them acknowledge that trauma is part of this. And if we go back trying to do the status quo, trying to teach this curriculum that, first of all, who knows anyway, right? So we don't need to go back to the status quo. We need to figure out what's essential for the students to know and be able to do. And then we need to also be able to address the trauma. And if they don't help educators to do that, we're going to do a disservice to the children, because we're already talking about putting them in roles, not having them face each other. I mean, we were trying to have them face each other so that they can have discourse. Now we're going to sort of be like, you have to stay away from each other and be robots. I get why, but we need to address that. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and Michelle, just before I come to you, and Shelley, thanks for sharing that. You're professor of mathematics, and put in a plug for your book. Your book came out 4 weeks ago. It came out a couple of months ago, but it's a bestseller right now for the organization, and it's called Women Who Count:
honoring African American women mathematicians. And a lot of schools are trying to get curriculum that represent diverse cultures. And so my book certainly does that. But I have to tell you, on Twitter, we talked about that. Name something that you use that shows diverse people. And some people said they couldn't name something. And so, especially in math, they couldn't name anything. So I was like, my book. But, you know, so there are things out there, but people are learning about these resources now. And that's a good thing.
And the title of your book again?
Women Who Count.
Women Who Count. Okay.
American Mathematical Association, AMS.org or Amazon.
So Jesse and Jason, that kind of leaves us out. But I think, can guys still read it, or are we allowed to kind of purchase it?
Oh, absolutely. Guys especially need to read it, because a lot of times we only show white males as mathematicians and scientists. And in fact, there are diverse people, and there are diverse websites and resource and text resources. There's so much out there, but I just think people don't know about it.
Excellent. And Michelle, just before I come to you, and Shelley, what you just referenced, it seems to me might be a need for another show, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard you say, even if everything was perfect with no kind of public health issues, the trauma, the experience that people have experienced thus far, when we come back, there's still going to be educational, psychological things.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So that's
absolutely.
Michelle, please, you've been patient and smiling and pleasant. And, look at that smile. Go ahead.
Michelle.
Go ahead. We have Michelle's. You're from where are you from? You're from planet Mars.
I'm from Manchester.
You're from Manchester. From Stop. Yeah. Manchester, Mars. We'll start with an M, right? From the Manchester public school system, and a math teacher as well. So Michelle, go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to tag on to what Shelley was saying. I'm a math interventionist, so I'm a math educator as well.
Okay.
And Shelley, she definitely said a lot of things that have been on my mind and kind of taken some notes about. And over the last few months, I've been really thinking about math education in general. It hasn't been as equitable, just the fact that I'm a math interventionist who services mostly Black and Latinx students. And not necessarily because they're not brilliant in math, but there's a lot of biases out there that probably could run down for students of color in mathematics. But what I wanted to say was, trying to think about that status quo. I think we're all worried about going back into the actual brick and mortar. We're concerned about that. We don't have a lot of information about the virus that's out there. We're very concerned. But what I'm trying to do is think about, how can we look at math education to build communities of students so that they are starting to think and be critical thinkers? Math is about problem solving. So what a great way to just jump right in and start building a community around math and mathematicians, and bringing in the social emotional learning, the SEL. If we can build up our students, specifically Black and Brown students, around understanding that, they come from a great line of mathematicians in historical data and facts, we can start also building SEL. SEL doesn't have to always look one way. And I think that's unfortunately what we do in education, is we fill a status quo. Where I'm at, oftentimes SEL language, SEL prompts, whatever you want to say, they're still very whitewashed. They're still centered around white culture, we'll say. But bringing in, starting to mesh together different things, specifically math, kind of on Shelley's page here, specifically math, and looking at how do we build community around math thinkers, around thinkers. I'm very much, I was a classroom teacher. So I taught reading and I taught writing. And I think that some of the best ways to teach reading and writing is to actually approach it through mathematics, because it really starts to get kids thinking. But just like Shelley said, we have to work on moving away from status quo, and how do we do that? And so I've been starting that conversation in my school around, using Shelley's book, using history and math, thinking about SEL and thinking about building community. And I think that we forget that we have to start to think about building community.
And Joanne and Jason and Janice, just before I come to you, and Shelley and Michelle, just clarify the difference between a math instructor or teacher and a math interventionist, if you would, because I'm intrigued by that. And just Harry, if you're listening, Michelle was a little. We had kind of like the tunnel audio. Again, Zoom is kind of a new kit. Have you been able to hear us kind of clearly, Michelle?
Can I hear you clearly?
Have you heard us clearly?
Kind of.
We're still a little bit, but we're tunneled also.
A little bit, yeah.
I guess I didn't know what mic you might be using, but Zoom is probably making a lot of money off of us, to say the least, because I mean we've been using their product like crazy. But Shelley and Michelle kind of clarified it, because I think it might be an important difference for a parent that might be listening to know how a math interventionist and a math teacher might be collaborating and even supporting one another.
Michelle, you might want to get a little closer to your computer. Okay. And then you start, Michelle, because you're the interventionist, and I'll say one thing after you finish.
Okay. So can you hear me better, everyone?
That is a little better.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to just be really clear about math intervention and then who I am as an educator. So right now my title is math interventionist, but I do consider myself a math educator. I co-teach, I collaborate, I work with the primary and 5th grade math teachers to, I guess I kind of like build up foundational skills in students who are lacking some of the foundational skills. That's what my title, like the responsibilities of my title are. I see myself more than that, though. I really think about how do I educate students to be thinking and communicating about math. Often students who have deficiencies in foundational skills also have the deficient skill in communicating about math. And it's not necessarily because of the student. Math instruction is very interesting in the elementary setting. Not all teachers are mathematicians, we'll say. So some students, they need more, I'll say they need more guidance, they need more modeling, they need more opportunities to be able to communicate their thinking around math. They also need to know that your thinking is valid, and as a math educator, I'm here to help you get to efficient ways of solving math problems. I'm here to guide you in deeper thinking in mathematics. So my role, if you look at the responsibilities, I take it deeper than that. I've developed ways to have students who we would normally say, are deficient math thinkers or deficient in math. I've developed ways to have them talk about math, write about math. I facilitate social justice mathematics with them, which they Yes, social justice mathematics, where they're looking at.
Come back to your school.
What did you say?
I need to come back and learn. I need to come back and enroll in your class.
You need my class.
I need your class.
And I'm the only one doing it, in Manchester at least. But so there's the title math interventionist that doesn't really weigh what I'm doing with my students. And so that's the reason why I talk about community. That's the reason why I talk about SEL, because that's what I bring to my students, and I try to do it through a mathematical lens.
The only thing I'll add to that, because Michelle, you said it all, but the only thing I'll add to that is Michelle is doing exactly what I was going to say in terms of the interventionist. She's not replacing what they do in the classroom, but she's intervening and seeing, where is the student? Going from an asset base or a strength base, not a deficit base, not what they don't know, but what they do know. And so that begins to be culturally relevant and at a higher level, social justice math. So you don't want you don't want students to not go to their math class and come to Michelle. You want them to get the math, and then you want them to come to Michelle to talk about it, because that's what many kids don't get a chance to do, especially if they're deemed as, deficit. A lot of times they don't get to talk because they're already afraid of it. I'm telling you, math has been traumatic to students. And so Michelle can bring that out of them by starting with their strengths. And I'll leave it at that.
And just before Joanne and Jason and Denise, just work on your patience. I'm coming to you. But just, Michelle, elaborate again. One of the themes, we have a lot of interconnecting themes for the show, but one of them in terms of the CDC guidelines. Any feeling about, even if what we've seen proposed takes place in terms of the distancing and the restructure of the classroom, the effect that might have? Where's your position on whether we can really have safe schools in September?
I'm so sorry, I missed a little bit of what you said. If you could just repeat it.
Can we truly return to schools in September in a safe way, given the CDC guidelines?
I personally don't think so. My classes, I can speak from the perspective of my class. So I have at most 8 students in a class, but I also have a class that my actual physical class is half the size of a regular classroom. So even with guidelines, my students, I would have to probably have half of my students. So if I think about that as a regular ed teacher, I am a regular ed, but a regular classroom teacher, we would still have to have half the students. I'm not really sure how we're going to be able to have students in school 5 days a week and make sure that they're getting what they need equitably. In my mind, I've always thought of like a hybrid model, co-teaching. I think this is a great time for us to talk about how do we co-teach with teachers. I think that we have to step outside of our box sometimes too, and not just consider, I'm in the middle school level and there's a lot of people like, I'm a math teacher and I teach 6th grade. Well, no, there may have to be opportunities for 5th and 6th grade math teachers doing a hybrid, doing some co-teaching. I really think that we have to start to think outside of the box and not pigeonhole us again back to that status quo. We need to think about what a teacher actually is, what their role is now in 2020, not 1920, not 1960. We have to think about what does a 2020 teacher look like and beyond.
Indeed. Jason, we can't let the math people dominate us and take all the show and the headlines. So let's talk about art for a second and the importance of art.
Yes, please.
But I got to tell you, I hear Shelley and Michelle talking about math being an art form also. So I mean, maybe they're on board with you, and I'm sure Joanne would agree.
There is so much overlap between art and math. I never saw it as a student. Math really scared me through forever. But that's probably the way it was taught. I never really got to the practical application of it until I was, an adult. But, piggybacking off of what Michelle was going on about the social emotional learning part of this, that has got to be a main focus. If we go back to school and have a content-driven focus, like always, which has really kind of proven not to be super effective, especially in the schools like my school in Hartford, and so I teach at McDonough and teach so 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and it's hard. It's really hard when students don't have the kind of support that they need at home to keep on with their doing some kind of a major discipline sort of work where they have to work. It's all mostly skill based, and they get volume over. We've got a great staff at McDonough traditionally. We're going to have a bit of a turnover right now, but it's if we go back without addressing how the kids feel, what they've gone through in the last 3 months or so, and what they went through over the summer, we're missing a huge opportunity to bring that into the classroom. And like she said, social justice through math. Well, social justice in art, that's a little easier. So I'm actually excited. I want to get back in the classroom, and I want to start working with the kids, but it doesn't make sense to throw a whole bunch of money at plexiglass and PPE and all that stuff, and then have the virus come in full force and then we have to cut it all off, and it's all for, we've basically wasted all this money. So we really have to think about implementation and, having a plan A, plan B, plan C. And, if we can get to a point where somehow where we have very, very small groups, okay, and those groups have to be monitored, and the family have to be very well supported. There has to be an immense. We did a great the thing at my school we did very well was communicate with the parents, because we have a lot of people have advisory. We call it crew. We have the kids divided up into about 15 kids per teacher, and those are basically our clients, if you will. I taught special ed for 15 years, so the kids were my clients. So we had those families to help through this, and that worked really well. So we're going to have to do that. That's one of the responsibilities of our teachers. I'm happy to do it. It's great to get to know the families that well. But if I recognize that somebody is not communicating, they don't have a phone, they don't have Wi-Fi, they don't have what they need to be successful, there has to be a quick response to do that. And now Hartford spent a whole bunch of money on the computers, laptops to get the kids on, right. And that's great. But if we've got nothing left coming back, we're talking about cutting social workers. I'm down to our encore, our electives are down to me and PE and health. We were supposed to have a brand new computer lab. I'd love to see a tech teacher in there. They weren't able to do that. Cutting down kids' options is going to make them feel worse. They're going to, they have to be engaged, so not everybody really loves art. I can't imagine why. I can't imagine such a thing, and I try to make my curriculum as universal as possible.
I got to enroll in your class also. I enroll in your class also.
Yeah.
Jason, Janice, just before I come to you and Joanne, let's do a little summary of Jesse on what we want to see happen when the state reps and state senators come back together. Let's go around real quick, and Jesse, maybe kick us off of what we want to see happen, what we think might be happen, and then what we might have to kind of respond to that might not meet our needs. Jesse, I'm
unmuted. Yes, I am muted. I'm sorry. First, I think we have to keep on the table the safest option, and that's to continue online. I mean, that is the safest option over there. We can't lose sight of that. That has to be on there, and it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. Yes, we need to go back safer, but I mean, if somebody is not holding this state accountable for why a district, Superintendent Dr. Moore in West Hartford said classes of 16, one child on the bus row, full buses that will only have 15 students or 12.
10.
So if we don't have this kind of stuff, he said the children will bring their own lunch. Well, you know what the number one question?
Ouch.
The number one question to go online was, how do we feed our children? And to that came until we decided we would give meals out to families on a daily basis across all of our poorest districts. We would not have went online. So to me, going back, I'm hoping when the legislature comes back, they not only deal with what it would take to go back safely, but they would deal with an inequity that is 170 years old in our state. I really, if West Hartford can do 16 or less, Superintendent Moore said 56 new classrooms. Well, doesn't that mean 56 new teachers in those classrooms? Hartford said they're going to cut 17 social workers. I'm hearing from all my priority school districts, the districts that educate Black and brown children, budget cut after budget cut. And we're supposed to go back. I mean, Jason gave us a point there. If you're poor in Connecticut, you only have art, PE, and health. as an elective. Well, let's go to Madison and see how many electives they have. So that's enough for me, Tom. Ask the others.
Are you there?
Oh, here.
We're waiting for you, Janice.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you were waiting on hearing. The status quo, going back to what Michelle and Shelley said, the status quo never worked for families of color. So if the governor is looking at what is going to work for all families, it is not the status quo. The status quo is highly inequitable. So, and when we're thinking about equity, we're not talking about giving everybody the same thing. We're talking about giving everybody what they need in order to be successful. Yes, keep them safe. We know that low income children of color have higher rates of asthma, have underlying conditions that make them more susceptible to COVID-19 and to other highly contagious illnesses. So yes, we want to keep them safe. Yes, we want to put them in environments where they're supported and give them support. But if we're looking at this and saying we need to give all students the same thing, we're looking at it wrong, because that doesn't work. I work with children who are probably the most vulnerable, families who are the most vulnerable because their family is in crisis. And I'm using that information when I teach future educators, that we have to look at those who are most vulnerable. We have to look at those who have mental health diagnosis, those who have behavioral health disorders. How do we meet their need? If we're not looking at how do we meet their need first, then I think we have missed the boat. I think we are not focusing on what we need to focus on.
I'd like to add a comment to Ms. Clark's comment. And it's related to what I've observed in Wyndham. There's a difference between to your community and reacting to state mandate. And what we see now is the reactivity to state mandate, because there's a disconnect, right? There's a disconnect, and I have an acting superintendent, and she's going to go, to the letter about what is coming down the pike from the state. I've been in the district 2.5 decades. I'm at a point where I want to push up against the state and say, now, how does that make sense to my district? How does that make sense? You're going to bankrupt me by December if I have to put 10 kids per bus. I didn't get a budget passed. I haven't had a budget increase in 6 years. How are you going to do this to us, right? That's kind of like what I'm thinking about. So, Joanne, you can say something.
Hi, everybody. I'm a alternative educator, high school educator from Dan.
That makes sense.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, come closer.
Come closer, from Danbury. And I don't know where my perspective is on this right now. I'm all over the place. Yesterday, you don't hear me. You don't hear me?
Yeah, because you're going in and out. You're going in and out, right? That's kind of like what I'm thinking about.
I don't know how to make myself heard.
Yeah.
Well, maybe somebody else should speak.
Because you're going in and out. You're going in and out. You got to stay up close to your mic.
I'm as close as I can get to my mic.
Yeah, we can
hear me.
Yes.
You're good.
Yes.
Okay, I'm an alternative educator over on the Danbury side of the state. You can hear me. Thank you. I'm all over the place.
Stop reading the messages
right now. And I came to this meeting with, my kids in mind, and just thinking how serious, this all is. This is not a game. Remote learning is the way we did it in the fall, in the spring, cannot continue. It did not work for my clientele. I teach alternative high school kids. I had 17% of my kids actually engaged. That's not acceptable. We need to reimagine what this is going to be like. I can't believe my dogs are barking. And one of the things that I asked for in my end of the year observations evaluation was, you got to train us. You got to train us on how to do this better. You got to train us on how. I see us going back. Maybe for me, maybe a hybrid model, maybe 2 days in and 3 out. But even that. How do you build relationship when you're in a screen? Like, I hate these screens. I hate this. How do you build relationship when you're in a screen? I need training. I need to see how other people do it well. I need to see how you can build relationship when you're in a screen situation. I don't think you can do it. I honestly do not think distance learning can work successfully in the elementary level or in the high school level. The other thing that I was thinking about is, we're talking about life and death here. We're talking about going back to school and we being protected, me being of a certain age, how do I protect myself? And the children, how do we protect them? And what happens, what happens if you have a kid, Rose, if you have a 6-year-old kid and they're symptomatic and they come to school and they infect their teacher? That is going to affect them for the rest of their life. There's no way, having lost my own father when I was 6, there is no way it would not traumatize a child for his entire life. I think of my high school children that are already traumatized because they're at risk, teenagers. How can we set up a situation where the probabilities of, life and death and sickness are so much higher? And I don't really know the answer to that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, this idea of teaching with masks, for me, who has asthma, is an impossibility. And then I've been doing a lot of research, and why can't we teach with nice, clear, professional face shields so that at least we can see faces? That's about all. Right.
Joanne, that's significant. Really sobering. Rose, just before I come to you, Jesse, I wanted to ask, because I kind of lost connection for like 30 seconds. In terms of the upcoming session where the state reps and state senators get together, are you recommending people to testify for open hearings, to submit petitions? Or are there any teacher organizations that are representing your points of view? What kind of civic pressure can we impact and apply to the process to have our needs met?
Well, that's a very, very interesting, good point, Mr. Ficklin. I'm not sure if AFT has my particular opinion. I am an AFT member. Joanne is a CEA, and I think they're waiting for the official announcement on the reopening plan, which is, I think, due this week, if I'm correct. And we'll convene, and I'll have to process what it is that they propose as an alternative or in alignment with whatever reopening program the state mandates. But I have very strong opinions about this, and I have parents who feel the same way. They just don't want to gamble. They just don't. And as imperfect the remote learning is, it is definitely one of the safest alternatives that we have. I mean, Joanne, we could go back to sending out packets and then having teleconferences, but risking and then spending all that money on plastic is the safest alternative, just especially since our budgets don't pass in the first place. My own town can't even bring themselves up to providing the 1/3 of the obligation simply because they think it's too costly. And of course, we have a 25% poverty rate. So the testimonies will be useful, especially since our budget's calling, but risking and then addressing about the way we're using the money. Are we investing more in vaccination research as opposed to just plastic? Are we going to give, how do you evaluate a teacher when he or she is wearing plastic and trying to monitor the sneezing, phone calling, guard, and then asking about, I don't see educating happening in that format.
We have about, and I really appreciate, we've covered covered so many. And Jesse, I'm going to start with you. And I see your hand. We have about 10 more minutes, so maybe 90 seconds or 2 minutes for everyone for kind of the closing remarks, because we've covered so much. But it's been so many rich things that you've mentioned that my mind is just swirling with the issues in front of us. But and again, we want to kind of reconvene and kind of chat. But so Jesse, I can start with you. But as your kind of 2-minute closing remarks, then we'll just go around Janice and Jason and Rose and Shelley and Michelle and Joanne with your closing remarks on. It could be a prayer, it could be a testimony, it could be a shout out, whatever's on your mind. It could be a comment for Governor Lamont to kind of hear, or for your state rep or state senator. But Jesse, you go first in terms of your affirmation as we kind of conclude. You're on mute. Jesse, we want to unmute you.
Unmute.
Okay.
So I think we should begin with the legislators. Their emails are open right now. You can go to the state website. We did it for Moral Mondays about policing issues. We emailed all our representatives and we let them know that we thought they should come back into session. We can still do that. I'm not certain they'll take in-person testimony, but we can certainly send written testimony in. We can certainly make phone calls. If there's ever been a time that they are listening, this is the time. And it's not just COVID-19. It's also what's happening in our streets with Black Lives Matter. They are paying attention. They are listening. But finally, it's a simple thing for me. When I became a teacher, I asked that question all new teachers ask. You say, how do I educate all children? How do I do it? And my professor turned around and said, who cares? You educate all children the way you would want your child educated. Amen. And if you do that, then you educate all children. So what I want to know, Connecticut, from our legislature, do you have the heart? Do you have the love? Do you have the love to go beyond how much it will cost? And that's what I'm at. Are you going to educate when Matt Lesser votes, when Gary Winfield votes, when Governor Lamont signs? Are they going to sign it in the way they're thinking about their own children? Love. And I haven't seen that yet in Connecticut. This is the state that allows you not to give an equitable education. It was signed and sealed by our Supreme Court. You only have to give it adequate.
Denise.
I would say we need to be creative. We cannot address this with a one-size-fits-all approach. We have to be creative, and we have to highlight the needs of communities of color. We need to highlight the needs of children who the traditional status quo wasn't working for them. We need to, offer options for students, for families, and really take a family-centered approach to education this time.
Excellent. Jason.
I can't wait. I know that all of my colleagues and students and everybody wants to get back to school, but it has to be safe, and it has to be something that we can rely on, and we know it's going to be consistent enough. Because if we put all the effort into it up front and then we have to pull back again, and we haven't prepared for that, we haven't put in the support. That's going to
be traumatic.
We got to connect with families that we know that are struggling. We actually learned a lot. It was good that Hartford put a little a focus on connecting with families during the last time. We did that. So now we have a good amount of data about who needs what. So we should follow up with that. My young kids go to school in Guilford, and so I'm on the two sides of the tracks. I really wish there wasn't sides of the tracks, but there are. And I can tell you that our kids down here, their friends and our families that we know, they'll be okay. We're doing it. We're doing okay. We don't need as much help. There's going to be individual cases here and there, but I think we can throw a few more resources towards, the Hartfords and the New Havens and the Waterburys, and that's what we're talking about. Let's make sure that everybody has a safe environment, and can get to the creativity and the wonderful things that we love about school, and having the connection, the physical connection. Like I'm teaching art. I hate teaching art over online. There's nothing to move. I mean, you can make a graphic thing, and that's fine. I'm not a graphic artist. I want to paint. I want to get in clay. I want the kids to do the same. I have a grant. I have a grant from UConn. They give me $5,000 to implement a mural intervention program, which I designed as being a support for students at the school, so they can have something else to look forward to and get into and work as collaboratively. How we're going to do that, I don't know. I want to. I really want to, but it's going to take some real creativity, like Janice said, and figure out how to work with small groups. And I don't know. We're going to have to talk a lot about this. But if we just go, shove it all back in the building, just like routine, it's not going to work.
Jason, as I mentioned, you like Albany Avenue can use a Black Lives Matter. You can start painting on.
Oh, I'd love to do that. Let's work on that.
We work on the outside of school.
Let's
Rose and Shelley and Michelle and Joanne. Jason has now given you. You only have a minute. You had 2 minutes prior to Jason. So now you have a minute. Thank you, Jason. Rose.
Oh, well, I think I said plenty. So one thing I do want us to understand is don't rush us. Pace yourself. Don't rush us. That urgency piece is a white supremacy template that helps maintain control. And, Mr. Gilmore, save the money. And when we're good and ready, we'll do the mural. In the meantime, you can do it on cardboard and so on. But don't rush us because we're inconveniencing you.
Indeed. Shelley?
I think as educators, we need to humanize education. We need to humanize math. If we need to acknowledge the trauma, and we need to make sure that when the students come back, or even if we're online in the fall, that we think about this curriculum and content differently. If we let standards rule everything we do, we're going to fail. We need to find out what have they done with students during the pandemic. And actually, families are always the first teachers, but we don't connect with families enough. So I was glad to hear Janice and Jason talk about connecting with families. If we don't ask for their expertise, we're leaving that knowledge on the floor, and we need that. Last but not least, we need to empower students. Students need to know that what they learn in math is going to empower them. It's going to help them more than just pass a test. And right now, if you ask most students about school, they think school is this thing over there that they do just to, fill out some worksheets and pass a test and hand in work. They need to know that education can liberate them. And I mean, that sounds like dramatic, but that's where we are right now. And I'm so serious about that. And that's it.
Amen.
Amen. Michelle?
Yes, everyone is saying everything I want to say. I wanted to just kind of think about where we are and what the universe is telling us. The universe is telling us in general, slow down on everything that we're doing. And so I was thinking about how we need to approach education through humanity, kind of like Shelley's saying, how do we approach education through a more humane look, being creative, being more open to communicating. Oftentimes people who make decisions don't communicate with the rest of us, including our voices, so that we can collaborate, so that we can reach those students and families who have been most marginalized by the system. Excuse me. And then the last thing I want to say is just kind of like what Rose was saying, slow down. We've rushed to push standards, to push testing, to push this. And it doesn't work, right? We've seen it does not work. It actually creates more opportunity gaps, more talent gaps, etc. I think we just really need to slow down.
Great. Joanne, please, you have the last word, and I know you love Zoom, so it's good.
As I'm listening to the voices here, they're extremely powerful, and they're my colleagues' voices. I think from this Zoom meeting, I come away with the need for the powers that be, Rose, to listen to the voices of the teachers. You know, what has been our experience? What is our wisdom? What is our advice? What do we need? You know, so I end this saying, please listen to teachers. Please invite us into your conversations. Please listen to our voices. And to all of us, I say, in this craziness that we live in right now, let us never forget the humanity of our students, the humanity of ourselves, and the need for relationship. We need relationship. Relationship is the key between each other and with our students.
Joanne, thank you so much. Rose, thank you so much. Shelley, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Michelle, thank you so much. Jason, thank you so much. Neighbor Janice, thank you so much, dear. Harry, we're good to go. We're a little minute over, so hopefully he won't spank me. But again, we've extended the invitation for everybody to come back, and we got to keep this going. So and Jesse, thank you as always, man.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Take care, everybody.
Peace out.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, let's camera action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Yeah, this is my road, let's camera action, I'm ready to go. Way too long, we faced them storms, now you gon' face the dawn you waited for. I said from night to dawn, I right my wrongs alone. In competition with warnings, ice galore. Now I'm running toward them highlights, I'm finished being a quitter. But little by little, they joking, telling some riddles. Now I'm in my section, ain't willing to give up. Know you getting knocked down, but you gotta get up. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, let's camera action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up, fall down.